Welcome to One Life, the podcast where we embrace the journey of living fully and intentionally in every area of life. My name is Matt Farnham, and while I don't have it all figured out, I'm walking this journey with you, convinced we don't have to choose between a thriving career and thriving relationships, health, and purpose. This isn't about perfection, it's about progress. And together we'll explore how to create work-life harmony, reject the lies of comparison, steward our gifts, and embrace the life God desires for all of us. Welcome to One Life. Hello. Welcome back to the One Life podcast. I'm your host, Matt Farnham. Thank you again for listening and being a part of our One Life community. A special treat for you today, an incredible story from my good friend Michael Leeson's with me today. I want to kick us right off with a formal bio for him, just to honor him, and we're going to get started. So Michael Leeson is a husband, father of 5, and a former missionary who spent 18 years traveling the world, mentoring and leading people to live out their faith with purpose. Now based in the Madison area, he's the founder of Homecoming Real Estate, building a business rooted in faith, trust, and exceptional service while prioritizing adventure and family life. So Michael, man, thanks for being here with me, bro.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It's such an honor to be with you, man. I so appreciate what like the way that you make space and open doors for other people, man. So I'm grateful to be here.
No, man, thank you for that. And at some point in this conversation, we'll get into how we first connected. I think that's a kind of a fun part of our connection and story. But man, as I just said it in your bio, missionary, and now you're in real estate full time. So missionary to marketplace. But man, just for our listeners, what's that background? The who, what, where, when, why, right? And I know Emma was part of this, your wife, part of this journey with you.
Yep.
Take us back. Like, what were you doing? How long did you do it? What did that look like?
Yeah. So I grew up in a small town in West Texas, and Emma and I we joined up with this group called Youth with a Mission, or YWAM, if anybody's heard of that. And like I said, for 18 years, we were kind of dug in, doing a lot of mentoring of young people, doing a lot of community development work around the world, sharing the gospel with people around the world, taking groups of young people with us as we were doing those things, and all the while doing things as a family. And a big thing that we learned through that process was that it wasn't a choice of kind of the way that we were mentored in ministry, was that it wasn't a choice of family or ministry. We had seen that before.
Mm.
Um, but it wasn't like, it was like we were a family on mission together. And so it was such a joy to do that together. Emma and I kind of side by side. And as our kids have been all over the place working with us. And so we did that for years. We spent a lot of time in Haiti, Central Africa, Southern Africa, China, around, I think, 30-ish countries around the world, whether it was kind of teaching and speaking or doing projects. Um, Again, like mentoring people as we went along, bringing them along with us in that work.
Mm.
And yeah, it was a wild ride, lots of adventures, military coups, burning tires, sickness, trusting God for finances and provision along the way. So never a
Yeah.
dull moment, and set the stage well for work in real estate, as we both know, that can be all over the place too.
So you're literally traveling the world, doing all this work, probably having babies along the way then, huh?
Oh
With 5
yeah.
kids.
Yeah, for sure.
And your kids
Yep.
are, you said 21 down to 10 years old. So how many of
Yeah.
them did you have while you were doing this work?
So all 5 of them, actually. So our youngest was born she was probably 3 or 4 years old whenever we transitioned kind of out of a formal kind of ministry role.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, but the others, they've been with us all over the world through thick and thin, sitting with us through all kinds of ministry meetings and challenges. They've been with us around the world teaching, sitting in the classroom. So if you're teaching in a classroom and your kids are sitting in the room, by the way, you want to talk about accountability, teaching people about relationships and family and marriage and whatever, and your 13-year-old daughter sitting in the back room, that'll keep you honest.
You know, what's funny, when I started this podcast, my mom she's literally a walking saint. She's amazing. And my biggest fan by far, as most moms are, right? But when I started this podcast and started talking about One Life a lot more, this work-life harmony and right, crushing it at home and at work. But she called me, she goes, Matt, the enemy, you're swinging on a swing set type thing, right? He's not going to like this. And man, spiritual warfare is real, right? But there is accountability too with the kids, but there's other aspects about that too. And you're raising kids, right? So, man, I just
Totally,
want to
yeah.
honor you for the work that you and Emma as a family had done, your sacrifice, your saying yes, your obedience. living with your guests on the table, man. A lot of people just can't say they've done that. And man, it's so cool. It's encouraging and inspiring to see.
Oh, I appreciate that.
I want to highlight something that Michael said, guys, and we've said it on this podcast before. I love how you took a moment and paused and you emphasized this isn't an either or life. It's not the family or the calling, right? Eliminate either or from our vocabulary. Everybody
Yeah.
listen to this. This is a both and life, right? It's the family and the mission. It's
Yeah.
the business and the family, or the marriage, or the calling, or whatever it is. So man, I'd love that you started that way.
100%. 100%.
So let's transition to real estate, right? So you got this incredible background, you're traveling the world, all this impact, but then you start to get this interest in real estate. What does that transition look like? How did it start? And maybe kind of lead us to that first year.
Yeah, so I'd always kind of had my hands in different real estate aspects of real estate. I did property management. We were funded through fundraising. We were volunteers funded by fundraising, trust the Lord for provision for years, living on like who knows what. I was looking at our tax returns recently and I was just shocked at the numbers. I was like, how did all this happen? And my in-laws, who I love dearly, they helped us to buy our first home in 2004 in foreclosure, total disaster, and helped us to renovate it and everything. And so we owned that home. We never missed a mortgage payment, never missed a tax payment, over the years, and then bought an investment property. I realized along the way, we were just like hustling and being creative. So we learned a lot of like entrepreneurial principles during that time.
Mm,
We also learned just to be fearless when it came to finances. We're like, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? We lose it all. Okay, sounds good. We'll just do it all over again. So then we changed our primary home and realized, oh, we can have this rental property over here. So we ran that as an Airbnb for a little while, and just standard rental property. I was doing property management on the side, and just always kind of around it, flipping some properties with family. And then when we just felt like it was time for a change. We felt like God was calling us. And I guess honestly, we can get to this further on in the conversation, like just like greater fruitfulness, which kind of sounds weird because there might be this kind of contrast for people, or kind of this binary thought of like you're in ministry or you're in business. And
mm,
that's just not an either or to me. It's like it's both. And the context has changed. And it just felt like God was calling us to expand our leadership, expand our fruitfulness and our capacity and our skills. And so we kind of left kind of everything that we knew since I was in high school. That's we jumped straight into this ministry work, and or vocational ministry work, I should say. And so that was kind of all I knew. And so I was like, I didn't know, like, do I have what it takes outside of that context? Can I succeed? Do I have what I need? And a dear friend, Tony, I was talking with him. We were actually flipping a property together at the same time. And we started talking about partnering on properties. And so we started having this conversation. Well, what if I just jumped into your team and learn the business, and then we'll do some more investment stuff? Like, it was supposed to just be a vehicle to expedite investment.
mhm.
And so then I jump into the business right at the tail end, like December 2020. And
Perfect timing.
right. And and I was naive, right? And so 2021 kicks in, and we didn't know how, like, we couldn't attend closings. We couldn't, everything with COVID was complicated. And rates were, whatever they were, 2.5%. And I was naive. Like, I would encounter this kind of like price nostalgia from agents of like, well, it shouldn't cost that. And I'm like, well, what does it matter? Like, the market is saying this is the value, like, this is an opportunity. So I was just seeing opportunity. And I think that was some kind of a way that the Lord had trained me over those years, was just having
Mm.
eyes open to opportunity. And so I came in straight away like that, and then jumped into that first year, and we were off to the races.
And then things start going better than you expected. Next
Oh yeah.
thing,
So yeah, in the beginning I was like, okay, I read what is it, Millionaire Real Estate Agent.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, this is how the metrics work. Again, I'm like naive. I'm like, okay, cool. This is the way you do it. Have all these conversations. So I did all the math, and I was like, okay, I want to do 40 deals year one. I sat down with my mentor team leader, and he was like, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. And I was like, okay. He was like, well, let's say 25. And so we're like sitting together in May. And I'm like, hey, I did 25. Like what's next? And he's just like, I don't know, man, like, aim for whatever, maybe. And so that first year, I looked through these numbers earlier. It was somewhere around 40 deals year one. And like, you can imagine the chaos. Like I feel sorry for our admin on the team, because I was just like, just
You're like
flying.
a bull in a china closet doing 40
Yeah,
deals
and
at
I'm sure,
Christmas.
like I said, Tony, if you hear this, I love you, man. Thank you for your patience. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was like I was just, man. If I was working Zillow leads, I was working Dave Ramsey leads. Like the phone rang, I was on it. I was on it, and I was just hungry. But I was also like the thrill of just being able to like. I felt like there was this awakening within me as I changed out of, again, this vocational ministry environment to this business environment, where there was something I loved about that, was like the immediate feedback that business provides,
Mm,
and it's like if I'm failing, like I'm going to hear that quickly and give me the criticism so I
yeah.
can pivot and keep running. So it was lots of learning, lots of growth, lots of grace from the people around me. That was a wild first year.
So what I want to kind of lean into some maybe deeper questions about this transition. And honestly, some of these are questions I've wondered with other friends in the past that have maybe made similar transitions, and maybe I haven't had a chance to ask these. So you're on the chopping block here,
Hey, bring it.
the firing squad. But what did people, or were you ever even worried about this? But what were people thinking or assuming about you leaving ministry? Was that ever a burden on you, a concern of
Uh,
yours? And
not
sorry,
a ton.
just to
Go ahead.
clarify, forgive me for
Yeah.
saying leaving ministry, because
Yeah.
your 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 vocation is not your ministry
Sure.
necessarily, right? But you know what I mean in context. So go
Yep.
ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, like, I worried about like the people that there were some people whose like opinion I cared about, and there were some circumstances that were challenging, as there often are. There's more to the story, but it was like, for various reasons, it was time for us to make a change. But all
Yeah.
of that was facilitating what the Lord wanted to do within us. We weren't, we were never victims, and we never were, we never have been, and we never will be. And so none of that was like, dictating our life circumstances, but God was working through all of it. So yeah, there was some things within the organization that we worked with that I love dearly. We have lots of relationships with, but I just wanted those people to know, like, oh, our hearts of like why we were making the changes that we were making. Or,
Yeah.
there's of course the worry of like, do people worry that we're like backsliding, or, that we're, that
Yeah.
we couldn't cut it in ministry. But I think that like the harder, to be honest with you, and I didn't this I was oblivious to this until we sat with a coach that walked us through some debriefing. And there was a point in the conversation when I just like seized up. I was like, I can't talk
Mm,
about this anymore. And it was really surprising. And Emma, my wife, we were sitting together, and she was like, well, what's going on? And I realized like the sense of failure that I was wrestling with.
mm,
That, we were leaving things undone. There were people, there were projects, there were things that we had vision for that we didn't bring to fruition. And that
yeah.
was very, very hard to walk away from. And I didn't even realize that I was wrestling with that. And there was a point that we had to reach where I needed to release those things. That was probably the
Yeah.
hardest part, rather than other people's thoughts.
Mm. There's a book by Jordan Rayner called "Redeeming Your Time." Not sure if you follow Jordan at
Mm,
all, Michael, but he talks about in the book this idea of time, right? And one of the biggest pressures we put on ourselves. This is me paraphrasing from some other wisdom I've had spoken to me, but a lot of the pressure we put on ourselves in entrepreneurship or ministry, whatever, is deadlines and like some false expectations. But man, he said in the book, we all die with an unfinished symphony.
mm,
Unfortunately, God created this world originally for us not to have physical death and to be able to get it all done. But that is unfortunately part of the fall of man, is now we die with unfinished symphonies. Like we can't do it all. So I hope that encourages you, just that,
I love
man,
that.
you
Yeah, I
passed the
wrote it
baton
down.
to somebody, and now God's able to use that person with their gifting and their resources to see whatever through. But
Amen.
um, what what did ministry, you already touched on a little bit. What did ministry prepare you for into real estate that you think most agents maybe aren't prepared for, ready for?
Yeah, I think a lot of people get into this business just thinking of it as a transactional business.
Hmm.
But the thing is that we are in the trenches with people, right? And so, for me, the roles that we've been in ministry was so much coaching, counseling, encouraging, helping people to make the life-changing decisions that they need to make,
Yeah.
and helping them to take risks and to trust the Lord with their future and overcome fear, and step into the fullness of who they are, and grow in fruitfulness and all that stuff. And to me, that sounds also a lot like our work in real estate,
Mm,
right? Whether it's working with our clients or coaching agents or working with the people around us through transactions, counseling, coaching, being an
mm,
encouragement, helping people to do hard things, helping people to take the risks, even if they know, like talking with a client struggling with anxiety, and just kind of taking the risk and being like, hey, I don't know where you're at, but my faith is really important to me, and I just want you to know that I'm praying for you in this decision.
mm,
That, and then and that's a risk, right? That's a risk. I'll just throw that out to this client that you're working with. But those things, like, integrate, I think that, like, the most powerful, profitable, meaningful way to do business is bring all of who you are to the table.
mm,
And that also, that expedites trust, that expedites, that gives people all that they need, because what we're walking alongside people through some of the hardest choices that they'll make in their life,
mhm.
and whether it's selling their parents' home, or walking away from a divorce situation, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And to me, like, I think that was the most surprising thing as I got into real estate. Was like, I look around, I'm like, oh, this is all the same. These are just people.
Yeah.
These are just people trying to do really hard things. It's just so happens that there's this layer of real estate in which we need incredible expertise
Mhm.
to serve these people well. We're not just like holding hands and wiping away tears. Like, we bring this expertise, and that's what facilitates this,
Mm.
this important experience of these people. So I think that, like, walking alongside people, showing up with all of who you are, rather than this robotic transactional kind of business, which I suppose, that's one way that you could do that. But that's, I think that was surprising. And then just the ability to, within that, to, yeah, to just, like, step over that line of risk, to enter into the trenches with people and, like, the challenges of what they're dealing with. There's kind of like this professional line, and I'm supposed to,
Yeah.
present to you this kind of, like, the certain expectation of what a businessman looks like, and I'm gonna step over that line and say, hey, I'm just gonna be real with you. Like,
Mm.
I care about you, and you've got what it takes.
Yeah.
You really do have what it takes to succeed in this. And that feels very, if it's, I was telling an agent this who joined us recently, like, if it's uncomfortable, you're doing it right. you know Step into some of that
True.
discomfort.
The only thing I would add to what Michael's saying, and Michael, you probably agree with me, because I agree with you, man. We're on the front lines, right? We're at the dining room table in some very intimate settings and conversations. And right now, for those that listen to this years later, maybe the market's going to shift. Of course, it always does. It's cyclical. But right now, at the time Michael and I are having this conversation, not many people are selling their homes because they really
Yeah,
want to right now. They're all short sale situations, loan assumption situations, divorce, change of life, forced relocation for military. Something is happening that's making them trade their 2.5% rate for the 6% rate, right? So these are difficult times to navigate. But the one thing I just want to add is be bold and be fearless, have those conversations, but ask for permission. And I think there's
100%.
there's something
Yes.
to say, hey, Michael, may I just speak to you from my heart for a moment, or whatever? Like, I'll literally say this is, hey, can I talk to you like you're my sister for a minute? Like, just,
Yeah. So good.
and they'll almost always give you permission, right? But I feel like it just breaks down those walls, and you can really just feel comfortable about what's on your heart to share. So
Totally. Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, and just to be clear, like, I don't walk into every appointment just like, hey, can I pray for you? And but, like, what does scripture say? A man's gift makes room for him, right? Our our expertise and our demonstration of quality is what makes room for lots of other things, that our
yeah.
lives can bring.
I love just a quick comment, then we'll move on. But I've always told people, not everybody listens to this as a course of follower of Jesus or a Christian, or of course that's not everybody in our industry, but for those who are, what a cool industry, man. Like, the way that you could ever speak truth into somebody's life and share the gospel with somebody, you have to have a bridge strong enough to withhold truth, right? That
Mhm.
relationship.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? We don't just get a random person trust us with their home sale or purchase without a relationship that has that bridge strong enough with trust. So, how many other industries do we literally get to make a living the same way that we would need to have the ability to share the gospel and speak truth anyways. It's like, it's really, really cool, dude.
Totally. I love it. Yeah. My wife is a midwife, a home birth midwife. So we were talking like, I don't know, half an hour ago about how cool. So, and there's parallels like her industry. Talk about, deep life stuff,
Oh gosh.
urgency,
Yeah.
high emotion, high stakes, all that. Um, but also this incredible ability to like just demonstrate the gospel, whether it's like articulated in words or in deed and attitude. Similar, but different.
Very much so. So I have a question for you, and I think your perspective adds a lot of value to however you answer this. And it's an idea, and everybody listening to the show, part of our One Life community, yeah, most of us don't have a background in full-time ministry, and that's totally fine. But the question is still applicable to all of us. And I'm going to reference an episode we just put out recently. Somebody I highly admire and respect, Benjamin Lundquist. He's a leadership coach. He's actually a personal coach to like 120 different pastors, if you're not familiar. But he talks about the difference between career and calling. And of course, our career can and should be an outlet or a platform for our calling. But he says this,
Yeah.
he says our career cannot contain our calling. I'm curious what you would say to that, Michael, especially with your unique perspective and background. Our career cannot contain our calling.
Our career can't even come close to containing our calling. Like it doesn't have the our calling is so much bigger and so much greater. And when we try to contain it, it's like you're putting this box on this thing that God just intends to take up more space and illuminate more light. And we're just covering it up with this, like putting it in a cubicle. My word. No, I mean Jesus's calling did his calling change once he went from like building to turning water into wine, or he was who the Father was calling him to be. The context and the expression changed, right? And every experience that you or I have come from are just equipping us for fruitfulness today.
Mm,
And yeah, I could not agree more with that, that our calling is so much more, and it's rooted in who the Father is calling us to be, right? From his mouth, that he's calling, that's where vocation comes from, right? It's a vocalization of who the Father says we are, and then from that comes action. I love this idea that like our, right action flows from identity. Who
mm,
who he says that we are, and our sense of calling flows from who he says that we are, and what we're, the why. And like, so when I look back at my life, I realize like the why has never changed.
mm.
The what, the how, the who. Yeah,
Yeah.
those things can change. But I want to be so open-handed. And as we were talking before about like ministry, like this binary idea: is it static? Is it ministry or business or this or that? Like, I just want to have open hands and be open to, like, if God calls me to plant a church or like be a missionary somewhere or something, like I want to be able to do that like in a heartbeat. I want to keep an
Mhm.
open hand and keep maintain my freedom of heart, mind, soul, finances, every physically. I want to maintain my freedom so that I can respond like in whatever God is calling us to, because my career, man,
It's
I
his,
want to be ready to go anytime.
it's his anyways, right? It's all his.
Totally, yeah.
I love, as you're talking, Michael, I literally am picturing like a pitcher of water being poured into a glass and it's just like overflowing. I feel like that's how you could just give off that vibe. And for those listening to this, if you are trying in any way, shape, or form to compartmentalize your vocation, your career, and it's not in alignment with that greater calling or mission on your life, that has got to be so frustrating. It's got to be like
Yeah.
banging into walls in a dark room. I can't. But Michael, you're everything opposite of that as you unpack that. So, um,
It's a fight, right? It's a struggle. Like in my flesh, it might be a different story, but like the Lord is so
sure.
faithful. But I think that like the ability that we have, well, just to your point, I'll just throw this out real quick. There may be people who hear this, or who we get to encounter, who are in just frustration after frustration. And I just believe that, like, again, like I want to follow Jesus with everything that I got. And I believe that he is so faithful his greatest mission is forming our lives in his image.
Mm,
And he will kind of stunt opportunities, where we're like, I don't know, I've experienced, I don't know about you, but it's just like I'm pushing, I'm grinding, and this thing ought to work, and I'm going for growth in this. And he's like, hey, I actually want to grow this within you first
mm.
before I grow this revenue or this team or this ministry or whatever. We're going to start within you. And that was one of the biggest surprises to me when I started following Jesus, was that he's more interested in what's inside of me than what's outside of me, and he can bring external growth in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
He can bring water from a rock. Like, he can do whatever he wants to do, but following him, like David, into the cave first,
Mm.
and then letting him guide us into, like, he will release the external things in time. But if we're feeling that like frustration and hindrance, sometimes it's time to just release it and say, okay, Lord, what do you want me to do? Start back from ground one.
Well, and I think so oftentimes it's some of our frustrations or discouragement is because we're asking God to get on our agenda instead of seeking wholeheartedly what's His
That's
agenda,
it.
right? So,
That's it, man.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a whole life orientation of
Yeah,
like,
man.
Lord, my life is yours.
So, hey, you touched on identity. So, perfect transition for me. Identity, I think, is something we all should be probably talking about a lot more than we do, especially in entrepreneurship and our field, specifically in real estate. But so many struggle with letting their identity be defined by what they do. As men, we
Yeah.
do that all the time, right? Hey, nice to meet you. What do you do? Like that's how we literally identify ourselves. But again, you have an interesting perspective on this, and you started talking about informing our actions and approach to business. So, specifically to identity, what would you say to that to encourage our listener, and in context of maybe a little bit of that transition you had yourself coming out of what was an identity in ministry?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, man. For me, that was a huge challenge of like, okay, I'm going to go. I was within this organization, and structurally, we're like, I had a role and I was recognized, and I could stand up in front of whether it's dozens of people or hundreds of people and speak and be invited and be known and all that, right? From that to sitting in a business meeting un, unknown,
Mhm.
and that was like, it was so good for my heart, just to be new, to be unexperienced, to be like, need to like prove myself in that context before I could, have a voice. That was good for me. And there were so many things where my identity had been formed. And actually, so going back to like my mid 30s, I ended up in this dear, wonderful man, this counselor, ended up in his office because I just was like, I just reached a breaking point. Maybe some people can relate with this. And I was just weeping one day on my bed, and I asked Emma to like come and sit with me. She comes and she's like, "Hey, what?" It's like a Wednesday morning,
Mm,
and she's like, "Hey, what's up?" And I'm like, "I don't know, I don't know." And what I just, something wasn't right. Something was wrong. And so what I learned through that time was all of these experiences as a kid. The trauma, the sense of abandonment. My dad, who I love, maybe you'll hear this. I love him and I love his courage. He at that time was struggling as an alcoholic
mm,
and was absent from our lives for much of that period. Mom, single mom, just grinding to make it work for my brother and I. And I realized how much of the work that I was doing in ministry was to gain approval, gain acceptance.
mm,
And from, some of the, we go all the way back, to this, like, there's this wound that I was carrying as a kid of just like, seeing me, pay attention, approve me. And and I realized how it was just like this exhaustion. By the time I reached my mid 30s, it was like I'm reaching, trying for this, and finally just hit a breaking point. And I show up in this again, this amazing counselor from our church, and he's like, "Hey, you're right on time.
mm,
Mid 30s, this time for this stuff to come out." And he affirmed me, and it was so helpful. He's like, "Good job not medicating and distracting and ignoring this. It's time to deal with this,
mm,
and just like walking with Jesus through that. That was so transformational for me to go back and reframe my past, the ways that I had interpreted my experiences as a kid, and getting to reimagine those things and see where Jesus was with me in those experiences. That was the game changer. Lord, where were you? Oh
wow.
my goodness, that changes everything. That
Oh,
changes the way that so I went through this process of kind of reimagining and remembering and assigning new meaning to those experiences. And when that past experience, changes from trauma to withness, or whatever we want to call it, Jesus with me, it just changes my sense of who I am and where I'm going, but when we're like bound by those things, um man, it just like hinders so much of kind of our future from there. So that was a huge part of my experience of just like, Lord, I am not what I do, what I have, or what I make. I am who you say that I am,
mm,
and I got to decide whether I believe that or not, and so that became the foundation for how I want to. Now, this is aspirational, right? You can check with me next Tuesday and ask me how I'm doing, but that's how I want to do business, And so there's so many situations. I learned this prayer when I got into business, and shout out to Jamie Winship. I think it's a book called Living Fearlessly. Might be butchering that. So such an amazing story, and he talks about this prayer of just asking God, "What do you want me to know?" So I'm in this situation. I don't know what to do. For him, it was like hostage negotiation. For me, it's like I'm in this, you know, this like an inspection negotiation or whatever, and it feels so challenging. Or I'm this client. It's just like, the situations we get into, but pausing in this, like, I don't know what to do. Lord, what do you want me to know? Pause. Okay, now what do you want me to do about that? And from my experience over the past several years, when I pray that prayer, Lord, what do you want me to know? It's almost always, you're my son and you have everything that you need. Something
mm.
along those lines. That's what I like feel in my heart. And then what do you want me to know? Or what do you want me to do? Like when I hear that, I usually know what I need to do, and it's almost always attached to courage and leaning into the conversation or being honest or being transparent or saying, hey, I screwed up, or, whatever the thing is. But like that prayer has been like the foundation of my business is, Lord, what do you want me to know? Remind me. Okay, now what do you want me to do?
Bro, that's so powerful because as you were talking about the first part of that, before you said the word courage, the words in my mind were anxiety and fear because I
Mm,
think so often that's our default. That's our
yeah.
natural default is what do you want me to know? Because usually we're afraid of the worst thing happening or how's this going to affect me? It's a scarcity mindset that we're all kind of unfortunately defaulted programmed to.
Totally.
And then when you said the word courage, because you know who you are and whose you are, like you said, it reframes the whole thing. And now it's abundance. It's like, I'm secure. This is what do you want to happen in this situation?
Yeah. My identity is not on the line in this transaction. My provision is not on the line in this transaction. This can all go away. This can all go away and I'll be fine.
Mm. Man, I'm
I
telling you,
say that, but like that's why, but I really believe that this could all go away tomorrow. What if there's a recession? What if this, hey, Jesus is going to be with us. Let's go. You know what? Keep our eyes open. As Proverbs says, like, open your eyes and you will have plenty of bread. Like, let's just
mm,
keep our eyes up. There's so much opportunity all around us.
mm,
Everything can change. And
yeah,
we'll walk with him and find what's next, And if we can show up in a client, at my best, if I can show up in a client conversation and I'm just like, I'm indifferent, and
yeah,
I'm not actually, but like to the commission,
yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to be fine.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is I've said this before publicly and it sounds bad, but hopefully you can hear my heart and context on this. But I've been doing this 22 years and man, I've always worked with the same amount of integrity and good faith and never has that been compromised, never will be. But I will admit there is no way that my first few years in the business, I was as good of an agent as I am today because I think I needed the money. I would have never given advice at all thinking that was influencing me, but now 20 years removed from that, that I don't need the money.
Yeah.
Now I deserve to be compensated for the value I bring to the transaction, so don't hear me say I'm working for free all the time, but
Right, right, right.
my point is it really but when you've lived independence like you had to, being fearless, being creative, like how are we gonna make this work? There's seems to be there should be more month at the end of the money every month for you, but as you're talking earlier, by the way, I wanted to say, Michael gave an example of what it looks like to live in God's economy versus the world's economy. Like numbers just don't make sense and it still just works out, right? So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
super.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Dude, I remember like there was one experience like the most. I don't know if this will resonate with other people, but there was a time where we had zero money. Our first baby had just been born. I left the hospital and I was like, I'm going to buy Chipotle for my wife. And this attitude of entitlement, like we could not afford it, but I was like, I'm going to do it. And so I went and bought Chipotle. And this again, I was just like, yeah. And I took it to my wife, at the hospital. I'm like, here, we're going to enjoy this. Just this terrible attitude in my heart. And I felt so convicted about the entitlement that it just like it broke my heart, and I repented, and I was like, Lord, I'm so sorry for this sense of entitlement. And um and then I went out into the parking lot, and I find a dollar under the car parked next to mine, and I get down on my hands and knees, and like I pick up this dollar, and I felt like the Lord spoke to me in my heart, like I'm going to provide for you, but not like that.
Mm.
Lay aside the I can provide for you however I want, but it's not going to be through entitlement. So let's leave that aside here. And that was, again, just like a silly story that may not resonate with other people, but to me, that was so foundational of just
Mm.
like, okay, leaving aside entitlement, leaving aside scarcity, and leaning into abundance and his provision. And, that's just been like so fundamental to me.
That's not silly at all, bro. I love it. Well, let's lean into scarcity and abundance. And I'm looking at the time here. I gotta.
Yep.
No, we're not going to get to all the questions I have for you, but I'm going to skip ahead here. Something I know that you have spoken to is the idea of scarcity or abundance and how you look at your business and growing your business. Now you're 5 years into the business, man. Things have just gone incredibly well for you. I mean, 5 years in, I don't know many people that have a story that you have after just 5 years of the amount of transactions and just success, bunny year success that you've had on the real estate front. So having all that said, when you think about scarcity and abundance in your business, like you had talked about everything from the way that you view splits or spending money on leads or assistants or transaction coordinators. I mean, we know these are investments, but a lot of agents really struggle with that because of the scarcity or the fear that comes
Mhm.
with that. What would you say to all that?
Yeah, I think that we've got to eventually we have to decide that we're going to take the risk, and we're going to invest. I realize there's a big difference in saving money and investing in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And, building out those systems, not just for myself, but so other people can thrive. Other agents we're building systems so that, I think the E-Myth, the way that he says is building extraordinary systems so that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. And that's what we want to do. So I want the support, I want the systems, but there's cost to that. And I realize like, the business has to be profitable, or otherwise I'm not stewarding what the Lord has put in my hands, and it's going to fold, right? And that would be the worst thing for my family, for our clients, for our team. So we've got to be profitable, and we've got to be wise, but we have to let go of some of that. I think, and some of that may involve like limiting the obligations of our own personal expenses, and reallocating that into the business so that we can we can be more generous in splits. We can invest in the transaction coordination and be generous. If we're paying a contractor to get in, hey, you know what? I'm going to throw an extra $100 on this because I so appreciate your efforts and getting in there quickly for us. But yeah, just open-handedness and seeing that investment in people
Mm-hmm.
is like, it's just, yeah, somebody says it's not a cost, it's an investment, but it has to be handled wisely.
You had said something about a rocket ship fuel analogy. What's that about?
Yeah, so that's looking back on. I went independent in 2024, and as I reevaluated my own experiences, what I realized is that so much energy is consumed in the launch. Right?
Mm.
There's so much energy. When I went independent, I didn't have a lot of money in the bank at that point. So that's how, if I was going back, I would re-advise myself, hey, don't buy that property. Don't do that. Like, conserve. So you said, so I can sit across from somebody. I don't want to see dollar signs in their eyes. I want to see the person
Right.
there across from me.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that, the idea of a rocket ship is it uses the bulk of its fuel as it's leaving the atmosphere, or like a commercial jet, like uses the bulk of its fuel just getting to cruising altitude. And then it's like, it's cruising from there. But there's this disproportionate amount of energy and capacity that's needed to launch. And then once we get to cruising altitude, then we're maintaining, right? Then it's not as energy and as capital and capacity intensive, but we have to acknowledge that, and I think that's an important thing of like coaching people as they are starting their businesses, starting their practices, whatever it might be, that it's going to be intensive in the beginning, and that's okay.
Hmm.
So start wisely. Have your reserves. Do what you need to do to invest in the business rather than trying to withhold or consuming it with your house payment or car payment or whatever.
I think that's good, and I'm glad you touched on that because a lot of folks might kind of listen to the one life vibe, that we constantly talk about. So yeah, it's prioritizing your marriage and your family, your community, and health and vitality, all these things, and the business. And they're like, Matt, I'm drowning. I can't even like get my head around that. What I would say to that is there's rhythms. Does it define the rhythm and routine of your life, or is it a season? If it's a launch season, yeah, you got to roll the
Yeah.
sleeves up, get
Yep.
under the hood, and put the work
Totally.
in. But we just got to be careful. We're not creating systems that are going to be. That's how we have to scale, right? Because that's not how we want to
Totally.
scale. Yeah,
Yeah, that's wise.
that's good, man. All right. So I'm looking here. We touched on the prayer thing. You talked about prayer with those two questions, but what about goal setting? Specific when it comes to goal setting, I think you have a unique perspective on prayer with that.
Yeah. So the question that I've learned to ask as I'm thinking about goal setting, because I'm ambitious. I think if you ask anybody around me, like I'm ambitious. I want to go. If you put a scoreboard in front of me, I'm like, okay. I mean, I've heard you say, Matt, this business or this industry will prescribe a game plan for you,
Right.
right? Um, and that's what I found. So I'm like, oh, okay, volume, transactions. All right, let's go. I want to be at the top. I want to be at the top, and I'm completely honest. I want to be up there. But what I realize is like in goal setting, what the helpful process for me is reframing it as like thinking about wearing the yoke with Jesus. Lord,
Mm,
what are you inviting me into? What kind of fruitfulness are you inviting me? So I want to like lay aside production and productivity, and I want to think about fruitfulness. Lord, what is the fruitfulness that you're inviting me into for this season? And it might be, it might be fitness. Like one of my goals for this quarter is to get 7 hours of sleep a night. I'm growing in that. Because I felt like that's
I have
that's
kids
something
in the
that
real estate business. Yeah, that's ambitious.
yeah. um, whether it's like health, fitness, relationships, or whatever, Lord, what is the yoke that you're inviting me into? How do you want me to grow in fruitfulness at this time? And it's not just me on my own striving, but what is He inviting me into? And that's what I want to set my eyes on. Not just my selfish ambition, but my ambition that's informed by cooperating with Him. And what I find a lot of times, if I'm walking with Jesus, that vision makes me uncomfortable. It's like bigger and wider, more meaningful than what I ever thought it would be.
Yeah. That's good, man. So one life is all about work-life harmony. I've always said I think balance is a myth. It's not really attainable. It's really about just harmony. But you've said it a little bit differently, where you've said balance is ongoing tension. So when we
Yeah.
think about entrepreneurship, obviously, man, we got the marriage, we got the kids, you got five of them. You still have ministry that you're still involved with. I'm quite certain. Other projects I know that you're working on right now with some devotionals and stuff, which are really cool. So balance is ongoing tension. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. If you look at somebody who's balancing, if they're on a slack line or whatever it might be, even while you're walking, if you look up close, what you really see is muscles twitching to
Mm,
maintain like balance is not stillness, it is like muscular focus,
mm,
right? And it's it's focused tension. And this whole I think that balance is a myth. Like that sounds great, right? But in reality, in the practice of life, my wife and I were just talking earlier and about like the grace that our family has for this season, for me right now that we're in, where it's like it's go time. Or when she needs to attend a birth, we're like, okay, let's go. We've got, well, we can pivot. We can take care of the stuff. If I was a farmer, it would be like it's harvest season. There's harvest season, but then there also needs to be the winter season and
right.
and the season of rest within that too. But I think that like we look at certain people and I think it's easy to assume like, oh, when we think somebody has balance, we think that it's easy. But
Mm,
balance is just tension and attention. It's guarding our attention. It's guarding our affection. It's guarding from distraction so that we can prioritize what is to be done during that time and making sure that the core parts of our lives are maintained to
Yeah.
sustain whatever the focus needs to be during that time.
One thing I'd add, because I feel like you're saying this, but the way I will phrase that sometimes is it's making choices, conscious choices, but owning those choices too. Like I'm making a choice right now because I know my wife's important. I know my kids are important, but I'm making a choice right now to be fully present at work, or I'm making a choice to shut that off. Yeah, is there an opportunity cost? Could I make more money? Of course I could, but
Yep.
I'm going to make it and I'm going to live with those results because these are choices I'm making. And we should be proud of the choices that we make when they're aligned with what's most important to us.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think like for me, something that a balanced life looks like, a balanced life is like I'm working, let's say it's some day where I'm working 16 hours and my family is cheering me on.
Mm. Oh, I
You know,
love
like,
that, dude.
and they're like, "Yeah, go, Papa, get it, go, yeah, lock it in," and they're like cheering me on like that. I can do anything. I can do anything if
Bro,
we're in
you
that
just
case.
you got listen, rewind that and listen to that over and over again, guys, because I'm telling you, when your family, there's unity with your kids and your spouse for the greater vision and mission for your life.
Amen.
And
Yes.
your career is a conduit, is just a vehicle as part of that greater mission. Listen, it's not dad's not home for dinner because he's choosing work over me. Dad's not home for dinner because we're on mission as a family. And if the
100%.
kids get that, bro,
Come
you
on.
just unpacked that so perfectly, dude. Like that was so good, man. Cheering me on. I love it, dude. We need to put a webcam in your office, bro, so they just see you working.
Yeah, I
You're like,
check it. My kids joke around. They're like, "Do you have a job?"
yeah, Dad, are you scrolling Facebook? How come you're not
Yeah, yeah,
home?
yeah.
Dang it, that's accountability. All right, man. We're gonna rapid fire some just closing questions I have for you. Well, I don't know how rapid this will be, but biggest misconception about ministry to marketplace transitions.
I think kind of like we touched on earlier is that we're not doing ministry in the marketplace.
Well said.
Like, come on, I am doing greater ministry today than I did in a vocational role 10 years ago. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe that's not right, but like, come on, the opportunities and the influence that are
Yeah,
provided to me, but also the challenge that comes along with that are just, they're greater. And I just think that God is equipping me through this platform to have greater impact than ever before.
I love it. An entrepreneur, listen clearly. You have access to people that somebody in full time, quote unquote, ministry is never going to have access to. That will invite you into conversations and rooms and dining room tables
Yes.
that you will never be invited to if you're representing a quote unquote church or
Hmm.
denomination or something. So,
Yeah.
so good, man. One book that shaped you most, especially over these last, call it 5 years in real estate plus transition years, so 7 to 8 years. Of course, it's the Bible for both of us, the playbook for life. Outside of that, what would you say is maybe one book that really has just influenced you big time?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with The Gap in the Gain, Benjamin
Oh,
Hardy.
so good. So good.
Yeah, that just like reframed the way that I think about my ambition and back to the goal
Mm,
setting thing. And
yeah.
man, just so much more room for joy and contentment when I'm measuring backwards. And I feel like that's also it's there's so much like gospel truth woven within that, because what I've found, that's how Jesus leads us, is he's like, hey, look where we've come from, and
Mm.
he's calling us forward. And yeah, that's been incredibly impactful to me.
It's funny. I love that book, talk about it all the time. But my wife, a couple weeks ago, she's like, it was something we are talking about. She goes, hey, I'm on board with this, but just one promise. You have to read The Gap in the Gain again because you need to read it again. I'm like, okay. Like,
She's
where are we
oh,
at
that's
the
so
in the gap? I
funny.
don't know.
She's like, I know how you get. It's time for another dose of Gap in the Game.
All right. Here's a tough question. Maybe not for you, but tough question. And then we're done. Define success in one sentence.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Success for me is living by my family's values. My kids could hopefully rattle these off quickly: adventure, abundance, connection, and rest. If I am maintaining freedom, so if I'm living successfully, I'm maintaining freedom to pursue life and adventure, abundance, connection, and rest.
Man, I love it, bro. And then a final thought. You know the context of our audience. You know what One Life's all about, Michael. So just for the person listening right now that's maybe they're drowning right now. They're just like, hey, this all sounds great. this tension you talk about, or this greater calling. And I mean, it's just some beautiful things that you shared today, Michael. But for the person who just feels like they're literally in survival mode right now, what would you might say to encourage them to finish this up?
Yeah, I think I would gosh, this is not an oversimplification, I promise, but Jesus is with you.
Mm,
He's with you in the challenge. He's with you in the drowning. And when we can see him with us, it changes everything.
mm. So true. Perfect way to wrap us up, brother. So, man, Michael, thanks for being with me, bro, and just being so vulnerable and just sharing some of your history. I didn't know that about your dad, and just, I love your heart and how you reframe that and the journey you shared with us. So, man, thank you for everything. Real quick, you had mentioned, I don't even know about these other than just a quick comment you made, but you're working on a couple devotionals. And as you guys are listening, we're going to have all the show notes at theonelifepodcast.com. So theonelifepodcast.com, you'll be able to get in touch with Michael and so forth. But tell us real quick about those. And then once you get those, make sure I have the resources, because we want to put that on the
Yeah.
show notes.
All right. So I'm making myself accountable here. I've been working on this for 2 or 3 years now, pouring through Proverbs and gleaning wisdom for real estate agents. So that'll be put into a form, devotional form, with, wisdom for real estate agents straight from the Proverbs. So that's forthcoming there. I set it, hold myself accountable.
I
And
love it.
then also a devotional guide for home buyers. So working on that and rooting that process in, setting our hearts on Jesus through the process, finding purpose and vision through the home search, what our homes are for.
Mm,
And so those will be forthcoming. There we
I
go.
love it. Well, make sure I know when those release.
Yeah.
And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, the Michael Leeson. You can look us up at homecomingmadison.com
Yep.
and hit me up. Would love to connect.
Awesome. We'll share all that in the show notes with everybody. So, man, Michael, thanks again for being on the show, sharing your insights. Thank you again for listening, everybody out there. I know without a doubt, I feel like I say this each episode, but this one, no doubt about it, something was said today that Michael shared that you needed to hear for sure, but somebody else needs to hear it too. So share it with a friend, family member. Somebody's on your mind and your heart right now that needs to hear Michael's story and some of what he shared today. So please help us get the word out. We really just want to encourage more entrepreneurs to just discover this one life the way that I think He wants us to crush it at work and at home. We can have it all,
Mhm.
eliminate either or. It's a both and life. Michael, you exemplify that, bro. Thank
So
you for
good.
your story. So grateful for you guys listening. Again, share this episode, and we will see you next time here on the One Life Podcast. I hope this episode encouraged you today. Thank you for subscribing, sharing, and rating the podcast. It truly means the world to me. And be sure to visit theonelifepodcast.com to join our community. That's where you'll find updates on virtual meetups, special events, and more. And remember, God created you on purpose for a purpose. You don't have to choose between a life of significance and a thriving business. You were made for both. This is One Life.